Hello, Raze Mundane family. Today we continue reading the Dhammapada. I'm going to jump straight back into it. We're up to section 13, titled Arise, Watch. Live not a low life. Remember and forget not. Follow not wrong ideas. Sink not into the world, for there is no refuge in this world. Arise, watch, walk on the right path. Those who follows the right path have joy in this world and in the world beyond. Follow the right path. Follow not the wrong path, for those who follow the right path have joy in this world and the world beyond. When one considers this world as a bubble of froth and as the illusion of an appearance, then the king of death has no power over one. Come and look at this world. It is like a royal painted chariot where fools sink. The wise are not imprisoned in this chariot. Those who in early days were unwise but later found wisdom, they shed a light over the world like that of the moon when free from clouds. Those who overcome the evil they have done with the good they do afterwards shed a light over the world like that of the moon when free from clouds. This world is indeed in darkness, and how few can see the light. Just as few birds can escape from a net, few souls can fly into the freedom of heaven. Swans follow the path of the sun by the miracle of flying through the air, and those who are strong conquer evil and its armies. Then they arise far above the world. One whose words are lies, who transgresses the great law, and who scorns the higher world, there is no evil this man may not do. Misers certainly do not go to the heaven of the gods, and fools do not praise liberality. But noble people find joy in generosity, and this gives them joy in higher worlds. Better than power over all the earth, better than going to heaven, and better than dominion over the world, is the joy of one who enters the river of life that leads to nirvana. Following on to section 14, the Buddha. By what earthly path could you entice the Buddha, who, enjoying all, can wander through the pathless ways of the infinite? The Buddha, who is awake, whose victory cannot be turned into defeat, and whom no one can conquer, by what earthly path could you entice? By what earthly path could you entice the Buddha, who, enjoying all, can wander through the pathless ways of the infinite? The Buddha who is awake, whom the net of poisonous desire cannot allure. Even the gods long to be like the Buddhas. Important, plural, Buddhas. There's no canonical one be-all, end-all Buddha. There are Buddhas, many of the ages. Those who come along and are able to refine themselves. Anyone. They are endowed the title of Buddha. Even the gods long to be like the Buddhas, who are awake and watch, who find peace in contemplation, and who, calm and steady, find joy in renunciation. It is renunciation from this world, from identifying with the pleasures and the suffering of this world. Renunciate from our attachments. It is a great event to be born in this world, and our life is to be born a human in this world, and our life is ever striving. It is not often we hear the doctrine of truth, and a rare event is the arising of a Buddha. Do not what is evil. Do what is good. Keep your mind pure. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. Forbearance is the highest sacrifice. Define forbearance for me. Forbearance, patient self-control, restraint and tolerance. Patient self-control, restraint and tolerance. Patience, self-control, restraint and tolerance are the highest sacrifices. Nirvana is the highest good. This say the Buddhas who are awake. If one hurts another, then they are not a hermit. If they offend another, they are not an ascetic. Not to hurt by deeds or by words, self-control as taught in the rules, moderation in food, the solitude of one's room and one's bed, and the practice of the highest consciousness. This is the teaching of the Buddhas who are awake. Since a shower of golden coins could not satisfy craving desires, and the end of all pleasure is pain, how could a wise one find satisfaction even in the pleasures of the gods? When desires go, finally, joy comes. The follower of the Buddha finds this truth. Men in their fear fly for refuge to mountains or forests, groves, sacred trees or shrines. But those are not a safe refuge. They are not the refuge that frees a man from sorrow. He who goes for refuge to Buddha, to truth, and to those whom he taught, he indeed goes to a great refuge. Then he sees the four great truths. One day maybe I'll do this soon. I'm going to comment on the idea of refuge within Buddhism and counter that with my idea of there being no refuge in the world. But not for today. Let's continue on. To who indeed goes to a greater refuge in the Buddha and to the truth, then they see the four great truths. Sorrow, the cause of sorrow, the end of sorrow, and the path of 8 stages which leads to the end of sorrow. These are otherwise known nowadays as the Four Noble Truths taught by the Buddha, the fourth of which being the Eightfold Noble Path which leads us to enlightenment. That, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, that is the safe refuge. That is the refuge supreme. If one goes to that refuge, then they are free from sorrow. You see, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. And I'm not claiming to be a Buddha, so I'm probably wrong, but that's how I see things. A little bit different from that, but let's continue. It's good to have opposing views. A man of true vision is not easy to find. A Buddha who is awake is not born everywhere. Happy are the people where there is such a person born. Happy is the birth of a Buddha. Happy is the teaching of the Dharma. Happy is the harmony of their followers, of the Buddha's followers. Happy is the life of those who live in harmony. Who could measure the excellence of the man who could measure the excellence of one who pays reverence to those worthy of reverence? A Buddha or their disciples who have left evil behind and have crossed the river of sorrow, who, free from all fear, are in the glory of nirvana. From that we continue on to section 15, titled Joy. Oh, let us live in joy, in love amongst those who hate. Among those who hate, let us live in love. Oh, let us live in joy, in health amongst those who are ill. Among those who are ill, let us live in health. Let us live in joy, in peace amongst those who struggle. Among men who struggle, let us live in peace. Oh, let us live in joy, although having nothing. In joy, let us live like spirits of light. Victory brings hate, because the defeated man is unhappy. Those who surrenders victory and defeat, they find joy. There is no fire like lust. There is no evil like hate. There is no pain like disharmony. There is no joy like nirvana. The hunger of passions is the greatest disease. Disharmony is the greatest sorrow. When you know this well, then you know that nirvana is the greatest joy. Health is the greatest possession. Contentment, the greatest treasure. Confidence is the greatest friend. Nirvana is the greatest joy. When one knows the solitude of silence and feels the joy of quietness, then they are free from fear and sin, and they feel the joy of the Dhamma. It is a joy to see the noble and good, and to be with them makes one happy. If one were able to never see fools, then one could be forever happy. He who has to walk with fools has a long journey of sorrow, because to be with a fool is as painful as to be with an enemy. But the joy of being with the wise is like the joy of meeting a beloved kinsman. Kin, the root word of kind. Kin, our siblings. You are my siblings, my family. If you find a man who is constant, awake to the inner light, learned, long-suffering, endowed with devotion, a noble being, follow this good and great person, even as the moon follows the path of the stars. Long-suffering. I'm going to read that one more time. If you find one who is constant, awake to the inner light, learned, long-suffering, endowed with devotion, a noble being, follow this good and great being even as the moon follows the path of the stars. I want to delve just a bit more into those specifics. If you find one who is constantly awake to the inner light, learned, long-suffering, and endowed with devotion, awake to the inner light of truth, I suppose, of of the Dharma, which must be learned. So those two kind of go together. I guess they all go together. But long suffering, does that imply that the wise must have necessarily endured long suffering and simultaneously an endowed devotion? Perhaps it is this long suffering that leads one to seek refuge in a way, to seek that learnedness, and to finally become awake to the inner light, to which we are absolutely devoted in order to transcend meaningless suffering. You see, when I say there's no refuge, I don't believe we can escape suffering. Absolutely. Because, well, the Buddha even taught discontent is the nature of this world. There is no refuge in this world. But perhaps endowed with devotion of that inner light, we can live beyond this world while still a part of this world. Perhaps that what is a wise, good, and great being. One who lives not of this world while they remain in this world. That's the end of the chapter on joy. Section 16 is titled Transient Pleasures. Transient means momentary. He who does what should not be done and fails to do what should be done, who forgets the true aim of life and sinks into transient pleasures, will one day envy the one who lives in high contemplation. Let one be free from pleasure, and let one be free from pain. For not to have pleasure is sorrow, and to have pain is also sorrow. Be therefore not bound to pleasure, for the loss of pleasure is pain. There are no fetters for the man who is beyond pleasure and pain. From pleasures arise sorrow, and from pleasure arises fear. If one is free from pleasure, then they are free from fear and sorrow. From passion arises sorrow, and from passion arises fear. From passion arises sorrow, from passion arises fear. If one is free from passion, then they are free from fear and sorrow. From sensuousness arises sorrow, and from sensuousness arises fear. Sensuousness seems to me overindulgence in sensory pleasure. Yeah, I'm going to assume that's right. It is. Overindulgence in sensual pleasure arises sorrow, and from this sorrow arises fear. If one is free from sensuousness, then they are free from sorrow and fear. From lust arises sorrow, and from lust arises fear. If one is free from lust, then they are free from fear and sorrow. From craving arises sorrow, and from craving arises fear. If one could be free from craving, then they would be free from fear and sorrow. Those who have virtue and vision, who follow the Dharma, the path of perfection, whose words are truth and does the work that has to be done, the world loves such a being. And the one whose mind, filled with determination, is longing for the infinite nirvana, and who is free from sensuous pleasures, is called Udham Soto, he who goes upstream. For against the current of passions and worldly life, he is bound for the joy of the infinite. Not quite finished that section, but it's an interesting idea that this world that we're thrown into, with its pleasures and lusts and cravings, that being the stream that we feel ourselves pulled down. It's an interesting thought to think that this whole life, this whole game, could just be a test to see who is willing to go upstream against those pleasures, against craving, against lust. It doesn't seem that far-fetched, honestly. Just as one who has been long far away is welcomed with joy on their safe return by their relatives, well-wishers and friends, in the same way the good works of one who in this life welcome them into another life with the joy of a friend meeting a friend on their return. Geez, that was a little bit wordy. Let me just read that all once more without trying to make it smoothed out. Just as a man who has long been far away is welcomed with joy on his safe return by his relatives, in the same way, the good works of a man in his life welcome him in another life with the joy of a friend meeting a friend on his return. So our good works in this life will meet us in the next life, either as relatives or perhaps by enemies if we act in evil ways. Damn. We'll do one more section. Section 17. Forsake anger. Give up anger. Resist fury. Forsake anger. Give up pride. Sorrow cannot touch the man who is not in the bondage of anything, who owns nothing. One who could control their rising anger as a coachman controls their carriage at full speed. This being I call a good driver. Others merely hold the reins. Overcome anger by peacefulness. Overcome evil by good. Overcome the mean by generosity, and the man who lies by truth. Overcome your lies with truth. Speak the truth. Yield not to anger. Give what you can to those who ask. These 3 steps lead you to the gods. Well, if they lead you there, I better repeat them. Speak truth. Yield not to anger. And give what you can to those who ask of it. What you can. These 3 steps lead you to the gods. The wise who hurt no living being and who keep their body under self-control, they go into the immortal nirvana, where once gone, they sorrow no more. Those who are forever watchful, who study themselves day and night, and who wholly strive for nirvana, all their passions pass away. This is an old saying. Atula. It is not a saying of today. They blame the man who is silent. They blame the man who speaks too much. And they blame the man who speaks too little. No one can escape blame in this world. No one can escape blame in this world. That's more in line with my no refuge in this world attitude. There never was, there never will be, nor is there now one whom men always blame or a man whom they always praise. Oh, right, there doesn't exist anyone who's always blamed or always praised. But who would dare to blame one whom the wise praise day after day, whose life is pure and full of light, in whom there is virtue and wisdom, who is pure as a pure coin of gold of the Jambu River. Don't know the Jambu River. Don't need to know. Even the gods praise that man. Even Brahma, the creator, praises him. Buddhism's obviously come from a historical time where Hinduism was equally very strong, so there's going to be a lot of references back and forth between the two throughout all of Buddhism. There's going to be references back and forth to Hindu iconography and deity, and I guess world structure, metaphysical world structure, which is, let's not get into it. Watch for anger of the body. Let the body be self-controlled. Hurt not with the body, but use your body well. Watch for anger of words. Let your words be self-controlled. Hurt not with words, but use your words well. Watch for anger of the mind. Let your mind be self-controlled. Hurt not with the mind, but use your mind well. The words we let slip from our mouths and the conversations in our mind, not that different. Phenomenologically, they're not that different. They have the same effect, the things we speak in our minds and the things we speak out loud. At least to the individual. There are those who steady and wise, whose body, words, and mind are self-controlled. They are those of supreme self-control. I want to read again those previous two lines about anger of words and anger of the mind, because I've circled them, so they obviously meant something extra to me last time I read this. So let's just... We'll finish off by reiterating, restating, going over once again those three lines, because they're exceptionally important. Watch for anger of words, of those words that come from your mouth. Watch for anger within them. Let your words be self-controlled. Hurt not with words, but use your words well. Watch for anger of the mind. Let your mind be self-controlled. Hurt not with the mind. Do not hurt with the mind, nor your words, but use your words and the mind well. There are those steady and wise, whose body, words, and mind are self-controlled. They are the beings of supreme self-control. Hurt not with your words. Hurt not with your mind. That concludes section 17, Forsake Anger. And it's also going to conclude today's reading. We will start next time with section 18, Hasten and Strive. But for now, rest. I appreciate you all so much, my family. This has been the Dhammapada. 2 more readings and we'll be finished. So, well done for listening. I appreciate you all so much. Trying to learn, trying to better your minds, to use them, to learn to control the reins and not just hold on to them. Indy's over here. She's been listening as well down there. So, just know that you don't even have to be human to learn this shit. You can listen along, bring your cats, bring your dogs. We'll all be enlightened. I love you so much. Sadhu. Sadhu. Sadhu.